You're just the definitive.
No meetings with Jacques Vallée were really very interesting.
But you were first-hand information for our UFO Association. But, folks, this is one of the director and founders based on his recommendation. Dr. Bruce Maccabee was having health issues, and we don't discuss those. But during the times with History Channel and Prometheus Entertainment and all that, Richard Dolan and Dr. Bruce Maccabee, a lot of these people. But we're talking about people really before History Channel. And Stanton Friedman helped me establish this radio station. He was the first one to come on for me. That MUFON, the director now of MUFON, Campbell, came on. But Stanton Friedman. No, Campbell just, did he come on? Well, anyway, but these are people before Stanton, would be Donald Kehoe, Edward Ruppelt. But Jacques Vallée, now people, if you've seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind, you've heard mention of everybody but maybe Stanton. But Jan was out there doing all this stuff, and but Jan wasn't in the show. But have you been referred to at all in Blue Book? Because that's where you came into my life. And you said they were doing, I didn't even know it. I think you and Barry informed me about Project Blue Book on History Channel. I didn't even know about it or something. But tell us about these people. You met Jacques Vallée, and we're dropping the name of Ruppelt and Kehoe, so we need to sort of...
Well, I never met Kehoe.
That was before your time.
I went to NICAP at least 12 times, and I never met Kehoe. He was never there when I was there.
And Ruppelt died in 1960, so I know you didn't meet him because you were still a little boy.
I didn't meet Ruppelt, no, and I didn't meet Kehoe.
Yeah, he died in 1988. So
yeah, I didn't meet him, but that was only because he spent most of his time at home, or he had an office out in Luray, Virginia, and he would come in there maybe once or twice a month. And he ran it as an absentee thing, and that caused a lot of problems.
Well, we all do.
Not to say anything about Kehoe, because he kept the thing alive. He spent all his money on NICAP. His family was. He really sacrificed a lot about his family for NICAP, because he put a lot of his own money into it. And of course, here's Vallée and Hynek saying, well, he's a money bank and he's just in it for the money, and any money he ever got from UFOs he put right back into NICAP. He was.
Well, why did they not put that out there with NICAP?
Why didn't they put it out there? Because they didn't want to listen and they didn't want to learn.
Wow.
Because it's more fun to be ignorant.
Well, and that's part of history with the History Channel, and not to put down Hollywood, but this sort of triggered you because, everybody knows that, and we talked about that, even you and I mentioned it was odd that Richard Dolan, the character that played J. Allen Hynek, looked like Richard Dolan. That was just a coincidence, folks. But, a lot of people now are getting a lot of the press and the television credit, and people are going to go down in this reality in the next 20 years thinking they're the people that made all this happen. But it goes way back before we were here. There were Edward Ruppelts and Donald Kehoes and Stanton Friedman, J. Allen Hynek and Jacques Vallée. And
we did Tom interviewed
Jacques Vallée,
Lieutenant God, I can't think of his name. Anyways, Ruppelt's Olson, Lieutenant Olson, who was in charge of Project Blue Book for part of 53. And he did interview Airman Max Futch, who was Ruppelt's main clerk. And and I got a lot of stuff that Ruppelt had written on their Max file. So, you know, he wanted him to file his stuff.
Well, do you have authors like Don Schmidt or Kevin Rendell, reporter, or Jacques Vallée was a computer scientist, but we haven't discussed him yet. But a lot of these old people were in the Air Force or military folks, and they, you know, J. Allen Hynek got the contract from the Air Force till, 83? But, you know, we got to pull all this together because the UFO Association, all I can commit to is helping Jan with various projects that he's involved in, but we're trying to get it on oral history so you guys can at least find us on the internet while the people are going to have the thumb drives and their own files. But we're getting into blockchain, and we don't know how we're going to be able to fund the big database for all this. We're trying to figure all that out, folks. So if you got any philanthropists into UFOs, ufology, alienology, cryptozoology, fortean, what do we call, you know, paranormal. But we're trying to pull it all together because it's about indexing now and hashtags and blockchain history and how we're going to pay for all the future databases. So right now, Jan's still dealing with all these old guys before him and all the collections, you know, for all of these. So are you including authors and reporters or no? Just
yeah, we talked to all kinds of, we talked to 200 people. Well, I didn't. Tom does. Tom has interviews with 200 people.
Well, tell us who Tom is.
So Tom Tulina, and he's in Minnesota, and he's part of the UFO history group, and he was what he told me was he had worked for Greer, and he was in my area, and he got my number, and he called me up, and he said, "Can we meet to talk about UFOs?" So I didn't know who he was, and then he told me right off, "Well, I've been working for Dr. Greer," and I says, "Oh my God, tell me it isn't." So I said, "Why?" I'm thinking to myself, "Why did I come out and meet this guy?" You know, we talked for about 4 hours, and he told me, he said, right from there I was hooked. I knew I had to do something important in ufology, and I said, "Well, I'm happy to hear that, but you know, I probably would have come to that by yourself sooner or later." So then, what we used to do is we find people, we'd ask them if they would interview with us. Well, some people wouldn't, like Janae, the guy that wrote the 1952 Life magazine article, "Have We Visitors from Outer Space?" He wouldn't interview with us. So that was a interview we didn't get. And Major Dewey Fournay, he kept putting us off and putting us off until he died. So we didn't get to interview him either. But we got to interview Bill Pitts, who was a good friend of Fournay. So sometimes we were able to work around that. Tom interviewed Max Twitch, who had been Ruppelt's clerk, and like I said, he interviewed Olson. So we were able to interview a lot of people and we interviewed a lot of UFO witnesses too. So that's how we found out about the Minot case. Because this guy had written into CUFOS, and he said I was his name was Runyon. He was a captain, and he had been the pilot when the UFO incident happened. And I think I've told this before. You know, we looked up the case in Blue Book. Now there's lots of information in Blue Book, but he had more information than was in Blue Book, and I'm kind of wondering what the heck is is this, it was such a nice day. My mind's kind of wandering, and he's telling us all this amazing stuff, and I'm saying, how are we ever going to prove this? And is there any other witnesses? And we asked him, well, who was on the crew? Who were the other people on the crew? I think he knew one name. And then he went into his filing cabinet, and he had a picture from the time he was at Minot. And everybody was standing out in front of the B-52 at Parade Rest, and you could read all the names on the uniforms. And so then we just went through the last names, and then he knew the first names and everybody's name just because that triggered his memory. And we were able to get in touch with everybody that was alive and interview them. And that was just an amazing thing. Tom did most of the interviewing, and I did the first one, and I said, this is such an amazing case. It is beyond anything that I had heard of till that time. And so that's where the Minot case came from. And it should have been out earlier, and I think it would have destroyed the Condon report if it got out at the time or shortly afterwards. In fact, somebody had sent NICAP a copy of, or had sent him a summary of the Minot case with the radar photographs. And Keogh and Lohr had been let go at that time, and Stuart Nixon didn't have enough imagination to figure out what that letter said. And so it just languished there until we went out and talked to Captain Runyon, and that was just fantastic. And then it was on ABC television. ABC didn't believe that. That's what the guy told me. I was talking to a guy from ABC when they were doing their Peter Jennings special. He said the first mission of this special, he said, we didn't want to do a UFO thing. We wanted to do something about life from other planets, but the UFO thing just took over the program.
What happened to Jacques Vallée?
And then he says, I'm talking to him, and he kept calling me up, and we talked about the CIA, and he says, well, I don't think the CIA is, we don't find that the CIA is involved to the extent that a lot of people think it was. And I said, anything that I tell you, I hope you check it. And he said, the only reason I keep calling you is because we do check, and everything you said has turned out true.
Oh, good for you, Jan.
I was getting calls from 3 producers on that at one time. One would call me, and then an hour later another guy would call me, and then this woman would call me. And as far as the Minot case went, they went and reinvestigated everything we did. Like I said, the thing was, don't embarrass Peter Jennings. So they went and reinvestigated the whole case again from scratch.
Yeah.
And then Peter Jennings had, he used, I think it was 5 minutes. It may have been less. He used 5 minutes on his newscast one night with this case. And then it was about a fourth of the Peter Jennings special on UFOs. They did enough research on UFOs that they could have had 10 programs. It's unfortunate they didn't do any more on it.
My husband mentioned Peter Jennings and one other guy coming out in the field while he was working for Schwarzkopf and Colin Powell, right? Colin Powell. You worked over there during that same time frame. So I was 80-93 in and out. government uniform.